Okay, by the way, sir, thank you for that information about on how we are going to live longer and how we're going to live healthy. So, this afternoon, this is a sort of interview. So you are vegetarian, right?
Yes, ma'am.
For how many years?
43 years.
Ah, for 43 years. Okay, now, okay, because there are many kinds of vegetarian. So what kind of vegetarian that you had?
Well, I've never eaten anything that has a mother, or that I have to chase, or that comes from a mother, or that has a face. They can look at me and I can look back at them. So that means I've never eaten anything from it. I haven't eaten it or from it. Okay, so I haven't eaten the animal or anything from it, which could be cheese, eggs, milk, things like that.
So, are you aware of vitamin B12?
Yes, I am.
Can you give some information about vitamin B12 of where can we get the vitamin B12?
Well, vitamin B12, it's interesting. There's a few, I should say, statistics, epidemiology studies showing cultures and people, like in the Himalayan mountains, the Hunza people eating apricots, and these people are getting married in their 90s, and they were, out of the three, Seventh-day Adventists, Hunza, and Japan. Those are the three. And those people don't eat any animals. And so I start to wonder, where do they get their B12? Because there is a lot of emphasis put on the need for B12. I've never noticed any deficiency of B12. I mean, what is the deficiency of B12? What am I supposed to feel like? Do I get different color eyes or skin or whatever? But I was asked that question on a national radio program that I was doing in the United States, and a lady called in from New Mexico, and she said, "Where do you get your B12?" And I said, "Well, do you believe in God?" And she said, "Yes, I do." I said, where do the cows get their B12? She said, "Well, maybe they get it from the grass that they eat." And I said, "Well, I also eat grass. Or wheatgrass, barley grass. But grass really refers to any green leaf, any green plant." And I said, "Well, I eat that." Another lady came on the radio and she said, "Well, no. It's not in the food. The cow makes the B12. And so I said, "Do you believe in God?" She says, "Oh yes, I'm a Christian. I believe in God." I said, "So, do you believe that God made humans in His image? They can't make B12, but He makes a cow that can make B12. She didn't really know how to answer that question. I don't know what prompted me to come up with that scenario, or that question, that idea, but it just struck me funny that here we're talking about a need for a nutrient, and God made us after His own image. And I believe that humans, our nutrients come from plants, and so if a cow can make it, or if a cow gets it from, because what food scientists and nutritionists are saying is you got to eat the cow to get your B12. You got to eat the flesh of the cow leg or the cow arm, because that's where the B12 is. Well, we find another source of vitamin B12, which is actually in a yeast type of, it's a healthy bacteria that grows in the mouth. Okay, this healthy bacteria also grows in nature in certain settings. One of the settings is, and I noticed driving here, lots of sugar cane. If you juice the sugar cane and you're boiling down that juice, you get molasses. And that molasses, if you let it set out, there is a fuzz that grows on top. It's not mold, it's actually a yeast. And that yeast is nutritious, and it's healthy, and it's actually considered by nutritionists as a superfood. It is B12. And so a lot of foods that I eat, like sauerkraut, you guys don't know about that, that's cabbage that's been set out. You put salt on it, or acine, so it doesn't go bad, but it starts to kind of decompose without rotting. And what happens is certain healthy bacteria starts to grow. B12. So there's certain foods that you can eat that actually I wouldn't call it a plant. It's not an animal, but it's something in nature. It grows in your mouth. It grows on some foods. And so I tell people, when you brush your teeth, and this is important for a lot of reasons, don't use toothpaste that has fluoride or that's very harsh chemicals. Fluoride is very poisonous to the body. It's poisonous to the teeth. It's not good. But there's a lot of emphasis in advertisements, and I could do a whole lecture on fluoride. Trust me. I could do a lecture that would absolutely, your mind, you would be upset and happy and a lot of things, because fluoride is a waste product from the aluminum industry. The aluminum pans that you cook with, it's all over the Philippines, aluminum. It is a man-made metal. It doesn't come out of the ground. It is a chemically produced metal that's very light and it doesn't rust, and there's a byproduct which is highly toxic, and that is fluoride. And that fluoride is in different places piled up in mountains, and they have to get rid of it. And so they have found ways to get it into our food, into our toothpaste, and that kills that bacteria. So use baking soda or Asin salt, charcoal, calamansi, or you could buy. I met with a group of natural people in Manila at the World Trade Center at the Natural Products Expo, and there's a whole range of toothpaste without fluoride, and we still found one. So, does that answer your question?
I have, I think, 5 more questions.
Okay, I'll make them quick. I'll answer quickly.
Okay, next. Most of people think that for those people who are vegetarian, eat only fruits and vegetables. So can you give us some information about what are those kinds of foods that are not too expensive?
Okay, so I like to put it in fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables. Okay, so think of those 4 groups, plus legumes, of course, that's a seed, but fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables. So you got your fruits, you got your grains, rice is a grain, nuts, coconut's a nut, peanut it's actually a legume, but it's thought of as a nut. Kasui is a nut, and there's a few other nuts in the Philippines that grow. And in America, we have almonds and walnuts and things like that. Fruits, grains, nuts, and vegetables. Well, we know through the research, through the studies, and we know through the Bible that the vegetables are the most healing and the building. And that is what we really are lacking, is in our green vegetables. And as an American, if you talk to any American, all of them, I don't care if they're Adventists, if they're heathen. I go to this boarding house in Manila sometimes with a lot of British and European, and I say, how's your time going? Oh, it's going good. I just miss the vegetables. I can't find vegetables. And that is a common conversation amongst foreigners coming to this country. But when you're born this way, and you're raised on rice and starch, and you don't know what it's like, and the body learns to adapt. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, the Bible says, and I really believe that, because I've seen people in Africa that drink the filthy water with the Carabao dead upstream, and they're eating things that I can't even imagine, like a rat, a dead mouse. They're cooking it whole with the intestine and the hair on it. They're making a soup, and I'm thinking, how can they survive? I would be dead, from the infections. But the body adapts to whatever lifestyle and whatever culture that you're doing. As an American coming here, I'm ready to eat that coconut tree leaf or wherever. That's not a coconut, that's some other Alexandria palm. But that banana leaf, I'm looking at everything green. I'm like, can I eat that? I was walking here and I wanted to eat those neighbors' leaves off the fence because I'm craving it and my body wants it and it tastes good. And so one of those days I was craving vegetables, and it was interesting because I just got an email from a guy who I was training here and working with a pastor, and he said, the pastor agrees with everything you're teaching. He just says it's too expensive. He can't afford vegetables. And I had that in my mind, and I said, that's probably true. And And I was, I was trying to understand that. And so I saw this green big bunch of camote leaves. They were red too, purple kind of. And I said, "Oh, how much is that? How much is that?" And they said, 2 pesos. Isn't it usually 5? And I was trying to pull out 5, and like, no, it's 2 pesos. And I paid the 2 pesos. And I took it to a neighbor's store. I got the knife and I chopped it really like this, except the very end of the stem. I squeezed calamansi on there. I got some garlic. I chopped it on there. And then I even opened a little can of garbanzo beans. I dumped that on there in a bowl. And man, I was eating that so fast, and it was so healthy. And I thought, except for the garbanzo beans, I just ate an entire bowl of food for 2 pesos. And I had so much energy, I didn't have to eat the whole rest of the day. And everyone else around me there at that place, Lucille knows, they were eating rice. 3 hours later, they were eating rice again. They were hungry then another 3 hours. And I'm like, you guys are hungry? How can you be hungry? You just ate. Well, if you eat nutritious food, you don't have to eat again. Rice actually takes more nutrition, the white rice, than it gives you. Did you know that? So it's the bayan, it's the extra food that you're eating that you're actually surviving on. And the starch in the rice is converting to sugar and keeping your blood sugar up so you can have enough energy to exist. But you're actually dying younger because your DNA and the nutrition is not there. So you just expect diseases around between 45 and 60. Okay? So I would say vegetables are much cheaper than you would imagine. I found them cheaper than fish and chicken and beef and everything, whether it's eggplant or any of that. The fruits get up there in cost, but still, they'll be like 80 pesos, 65 pesos, and then the fish can be 90 or 100 pesos for the same weight. So I think that if we change our thought pattern a little bit, I think the biggest thing is this, is a transition in the stomach is interesting, it's difficult. You look at me, I've never tasted any of those foods that you eat in my life. Yet I'm fine and I don't miss them. It takes about 2 weeks to produce new taste buds, and then you do a transition, and you just make that transition. I met many Filipinos that have done that transition, and going to America, coming back. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. My next question is, as a while ago you said that your father is vegetarian. So what did you observe about your father as being vegetarian? What did you observe?
Well, that's an interesting question. I never saw him, and this is something I struggle with because I'm cleansing when I'm in this country. I'm eating fruits, and my nose is running sometimes, and I'm getting wet in the rain, and I'm like, what about my dad? I never saw him have a runny nose one time in my life. I always said, Dad, don't you ever have a cough or a runny nose? And he never did. And he was never sick. A couple times he had a fever, but he went to bed, he woke up. He was just generally really healthy. He was also, and I want to say this with all respect, I don't mean anything by it, but my dad was very kind to me and very gentle with me. He never spanked me, punished me as a child out of anger. He would always take me somewhere quiet, pray with me, and explain to me the consequences of my actions. He would punish me and cry. And I have noticed that with animals, carnivores versus herbivores. And if you look at all the carnivorous animals, they're very vicious. Dogs and cats and animals that eat flesh are more aggressive. Animals like horses and cows and elephants that eat the herbs. And we're getting a little pet monkey, and I'm telling myself, we're going to feed it only plants. Because in all the study with animals, even the lion, there's a lion story where the lion never had a drop of blood. And it was extremely gentle and took care of the babies. And so if you want to have a personality or a demeanor of being relaxed and gentle, eat plants. And I noticed that in my father a lot. So he was very smart. Oh, I will say that he was extremely, extremely smart. And I know Daniel, and they were 10 times smarter. So my dad, this is one thing I would do. I would open the Bible, I would say, Dad, turn around, close your eyes. I would go like this, I would close my eyes, I would point my finger, and I'd say, okay, what does it say here at this chapter and verse? And he wouldn't look at it, and he would start quoting the Bible. So I do it again, like he's got to miss this time. And he literally knew the Bible by heart, from Genesis to Revelation, and I don't know how much spirit of prophecy, but lots of spirit of prophecy. Great controversy, steps to Christ, desire of ages. He was able to memorize all of it. And I don't really know how to explain that except that his mind was very sharp. Okay?
Next is speaking of fish, because a lot of Filipino used to eat fish, right? Filipino? Yes. Okay, what can you say about fish?
Well,
if you are going to eat fish.
Okay. Again, I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm going to throw out a couple things for you to think about. Anything that flaps a fin, wiggles a fin, flaps, whatever, whether it's a leg, if it's made up of muscle, it's fat, cholesterol, people say fish has the healthy fat. The healthy fat, actually, omega-3 is one, or they call it gamma-linolenic acid. It's a fatty acid. That actually comes from the plants or the algae that the fish eat. Okay, so there's always a general source. What's typically known about fish is the water they swim in, whatever the contaminants are in that water, the fish will be 1+ million times more concentrated than the water. So in third world countries, industrial pollutants, the management of them is non-existent hardly. I mean, in Manila and different places, millions of tons of toxic and industrial waste goes into the ocean and is absorbed in the ocean, and it goes down the food chain, and it gets in the... Animals carry disease. Plants do not. You can grow a plant in a septic system or in a sewer and eat it, and it's fresh and clean and disease-free. But animals, when they get poisons in their body, then they get cancer. And for example, cows in America, 100% of the cows are now found to have cancer. And so the government has said, well, since they all have cancer, now we're just going to allow cancer to be eaten because it's cooked. So we're just going to eat cooked cancer. Leukemia is what they call it. So the problem is there's diseases in the animals, and the earth is crying out, Jesus is coming. There's a lot of diseases. And so you might say, well, there's nothing else to eat. So I'm kind of giving you some ideas. If you have nothing else to eat, pray and ask God, but like jumping off a cliff. If I have another option, if I don't have a parachute, there's natural laws. God normally, in my world, doesn't take the cholesterol out, doesn't take the poisons out. So there's always going to be a chance of that. So people bring this subject, and the pastor mentioned it, that Jesus ate fish. And, maybe, that's a possibility. I can say that the fish in Jesus' time, 2,000 years ago, weren't polluted. I can guarantee that. There was no toxic chemicals in the water back. They didn't even have toxic chemicals available. So there's no toxic chemicals. But also, when we talk about Jesus eating fish, and I'm just being honest, and I'm looking for any counsel, okay? I'm not trying to be dogmatic and know it all. There's only a few places in the Bible that talk about fish and Jesus. And it's where Jesus was serving fish. And one place it says he ate with them, and there was fish available, and honeycomb on the beach. And another time he fed the people fish and bread. Well, Lucille was mentioning that, and I said, Lucille, remember I bought chicken and fed the Filipino people chicken? I've never eaten a chicken in my life. I fed a man pork once, because that's what he wanted. Because I was witnessing to him, and I was helping him cook in his kitchen. And I think, really, honestly, it's not so much about the food in some respects. If you can kind of follow me on this, God is looking at the heart, and He wants to help the people spiritually more than anything. And so, there's a place I draw the line. I'm not going to give cocaine to the cocaine addicts, and I'm not going to give heroin and shabu and marijuana, cigarettes and alcohol. But I do know an Adventist man that I highly respect that actually went to an area of bums. He bought them wine and he took it to them and sat down and talked to them. And they were shocked, and they told their whole story of how they were rich and they ended up homeless and bums, and they didn't know what else to do, and they were just drinking themselves to death. And he was the first person that came and talked to them, but he met them where they were at. And it was something, sometimes people want things, they may not be the best, and so I don't really have all the answers to that, but if I've taken some law classes and I've studied the Bible thoroughly, and I've never found a place where it downright says, and Jesus ate the fish. It doesn't say he condemned it. It doesn't say he obviously condoned it because he fed it to him. It wasn't a sin. So I know there was not the diseases and the germs in the fish. It's not about a sin. It's just about we are facing a time like never before. Please hear me on this. Cancer 25, 30 years ago was 1 out of 27. It's right now 1 out of 2 people. When cancer becomes an epidemic where half of the people in this church are going to have cancer, we have to start looking at where is the cancer coming from? What can we do differently to get free from cancer and not have cancer? And when we look at our food sources and find out that it may be coming from fish or chicken or beef, we could say all kinds of things about, well, Jesus ate it, or this is okay because, but it doesn't change the fact that if that is a source of food that is causing the cancer, if you eliminate that, you also eliminate the cancer. And so that's all I'm trying to say is we're trying to find the best diet possible and eliminate any possibilities of where the cancer can come from. When you grow cancer in a test tube or a petri dish, you use flesh of an animal, dead animals. You can't grow cancer from plants, but you can from dead animals, and you can make a tumor grow. Okay, is that it?
My last question is,
Speaking of milk, speaking of milk, then we know that milk is good for bones. Milk that is made from animals, should I say cow or others? Then how true that is true that milk that is made for animals is good for bones? Because a lot of mother who love to drink their babies about the milk Bear Brand. We know that Bear Brand is came from cows, animals. Then for those old people, they love to drink Anlin. How true is that, sir?
Well, thankfully it's not me saying this. Thankfully I've got all the medical literature, all of the doctors on my side, famous doctors in Manila, all over the Philippines, and anywhere. Now this is where we have a unanimous understanding of this fact. So I'll say the truth and then I'll explain why. Milk has very little calcium, and it actually takes calcium out of the body. It takes calcium out of the bones. Milk drinking from another species, not your mother, your human mother, but drinking outside of your species causes osteoporosis. A person becomes osteoporotic from drinking milk. Okay? That is the truth. And all the medical literature backs that fact up. And I'll explain why. Harvard University, Yale University, Stanford University, all of the medical literature says this. But people don't read the medical literature. The doctors have access to it, but they rarely look at it because they've spent 8 years in college, they're practicing, they don't want to go and read all those different studies. Besides, they're not real popular anyway because they're not good for money. They just bring out facts. So the fact is that milk does not make strong bones. Now, I was in a store here in the Philippines walking down an aisle and I heard a big crack. And then it said, "Is that your bones I hear? Buy Bear brand." And it was this talking advertisement giving out coupons. Take a coupon. I was like, what is that? It was this little machine that you dispense a coupon, and it had a speaker talking about broken bones and calcium. And, you know, it was so sad because knowing what I know, you know, you can imagine. So in California, the milk industry, the dairy industry is number one. Number one, number one, number one. You fly back and forth 1,000 miles, everything is dairy. Number two is pharmaceutical. So they sell something that makes you sick, then they sell something that tries to get you well but doesn't. And then number three, industry, as far as money, is Hollywood entertainment. So they're basically entertaining you with movies while they're killing you and then killing you trying to get you well. It's the number one industry. Okay, so they're going to have an advertisement campaign. The milk and dairy industry in the United States supplies all of the money and funding for certain grades, kinder they call it, kindergarten through I forget what, all the mathematics, English books. They pay for all the educational material. So in those books they have all kinds of hidden messages and stuff to propagate or trying to sell their products and educate children to buy that. That information trickles into different countries like the Philippines, and then the United States has companies that come in here, and then Filipino entrepreneurs start to copy and make money off of those products, and so it becomes a big money-making industry. Now I'll explain how it works and why there's proof of this besides numerous studies. Cow's milk takes a 40-pound cow, and in 6 months it's 600 pounds. That's the kind of protein that makes that cow become so big. If you put that protein in a human, it's like rocket fuel, kind of, being put in a multi-gas, maybe. It's really super high protein, not good for a human. And so in order to digest that protein, in fact, the white glue that you use in your school classes is sodium casein glue. That's basically protein from cow's milk, boiled down into a thick glue, just so you know. So that white glue, Elmer's glue, or I don't know, that is high protein. So in order to digest that protein, the liver has to produce a lot of acid, hydrochloric acid. That acid breaks down those molecules of protein, and your body becomes really acidic. You don't want acid, you want alkaline. Disease is in acid, like leukemia and cancer and AIDS and everything bad. Alkaline is where disease doesn't grow. That's why you want an alkaline clay pot for your water, so it doesn't grow all that bacteria. So when your body is acid, what happens is it has to neutralize the acid, and the pH has to auto-correct very quickly, because you'll die if your pH is not right. You think of a fish in an aquarium. If the pH of the water is off, the fish dies. You have to keep the water. When you treat a fish, you treat the water, and you keep the pH right, or the fish is dead. Remember, our body is all water, 70–80% water. If our water pH is not right, we're dead. So the body, to correct that acidity level, it takes something to neutralize the acid. What neutralizes acid? If you have an acid-burned stomach, you go to a pharmacy and they give you a number of products which are Tums, maybe in America, I don't know what it's called here. It's an antacid. It's calcium carbonate. It's calcium citrate. It's calcium. The only source of calcium in our body is in our bones, in our bone structure. So in order to neutralize that acid, it leaches all the calcium out of the bones. So here they're telling you it's giving you calcium, it's taking calcium out of the bones, and where does the calcium go? It comes out in the urine and goes in the CR. And there's a couple things it does. One thing that it does is it causes kidney stones and it causes kidney problems because you got all this calcium being dumped out through your kidneys because you're eating so much high protein and milk. And to put that milk in a little baby is the most devastating thing because the baby has to adjust, it has to adapt. And remember, we're made after God's image. You give most animals milk from another species or food outside of its food source that he normally eats in nature, animals die very quickly. In fact, cats can't even reproduce after several generations. But humans, I believe, because we're created so fearfully and wonderfully made, we have the ability to adapt, but not perfectly. We can't eat these things and get away with it. So my proof is this. Every country that eats the most protein and meat, but in dairy, in milk, they have the highest rates of osteoporosis. America and North America and North European countries and the Netherlands have the highest. In fact, the average lifespan of people is 35 to 40 years old, and they die from osteoporosis. In Upper Alaska, in the Netherlands, and it's osteoporosis they're dying from. Now, you may find out, oh, they're dying from pneumonia, they're dying from tuberculosis, but you know what happened is they broke their bones. They went in the hospital because they have broken bones, and their sedentary life and the communicable diseases in the hospital end up giving them pneumonia. But if you trace it back, it's because they fell and broke their hip. Did you ever hear of an old person dying in the hospital of pneumonia? Because they first broke their hip, they fell, they broke a bone. It can't heal because it's osteoporosis that's causing that problem in the first place. So milk is very much a hazard in the human food chain. And it's so interesting, you think about it, we're supposed to be weaned at a year to 2 years. A year is fine, 2 years is good. But we really have no reason to be drinking milk after we're a baby, plus drinking milk from another species. It's not designed for us. As we understand how God made things, He made certain animals. For certain, the cow milk is designed for cows. And one last fact about cow's milk, a study that I just recently read, and you can look it up on Google. It's true. I've checked it with all the doctors. 3 glasses of milk, which is the recommended milk that the USDA or the government in America recommends to be healthy. 3 glasses of milk a day is equal to 12 slices, or is it 12 or 24 slices of bacon, pork. The same amount of cholesterol, the same amount of fat, and everything that clogs the arteries. In fact, there's a group of doctors now that are calling milk liquid meat because it has cholesterol, it has so many bad things in it, and in fact, 2/3 of the world, 2/3, more than 2/3, but what's been published is 2/3 of the world's population is allergic to milk. Only 1/3. Africans can't drink milk, and most Asians are allergic. They're lactose intolerant. I don't know if you knew that. And they have symptoms, and the doctors find out, well, you're lactose intolerant. You cannot tolerate milk, so don't drink milk. But sometimes they still do. Okay?
So how about milk that is made from beans? That's what we call soya milk.
Okay.
Soya milk.
It's from a plant source, and I would have to say that in the Philippines, with the amounts of foods, the sources of foods, and the resources, I have found it to be very beneficial in my own life in a lot of ways. Now, in America, we have so many more choices of foods. It's kind of down on the bottom of choices because we've got fruit juices, vegetable juices, broccoli juices, and when you get down to soy, it's a bean. It has some good healthy protein. It has anti-cancer fighting chemicals and properties that are healthy for you. But again, we get back to the temperance. Just because it's good, it doesn't mean that it's going to heal every disease. It doesn't mean that you can drink a gallon a day, and most of the soy milks that are out there, they're putting sugar in it, which lowers your immune system. You want to sweeten it with some natural, maybe muscovado, maybe honey, maybe something more natural than, especially not white sugar. Or you can just use it unsweetened. I like it unsweetened. And then I just You put it in a, you know, it's traditionally around the world, milk, soy milk, whatever, you put on a cereal, a granola, you know, cornflakes. It's a breakfast thing. So you put a little bit there, and you eat it, and the food is moist, and it's good, and it's healthy. But don't think it's a wonderful heal-all medicine. It's a healthy food. Okay? That's it.
That's from me. Thank you.